Welcome everybody to our presentation day for the UX Research Challenge. For the last few weeks, we have been working hard with companies, mentors, and fellow participants to do the comprehensive research findings and present those here today in this meeting. Just a quick structure for the presentation today. We will have the first team presenting, which will be team 12. Each team will have 10 minutes to present, followed by 5 minutes of feedback from our mentor, Jen, today. And after that, we'll have team 2 and 14 present as well, followed by a Q&A session at the very end, an open-ended Q&A session where anyone can share their feedback or have any questions. So we will have Jen Fast, who's a mentor with IterateUX. She's a staff UX researcher at ServiceNow, and she'll be giving insights and feedback on each of the presentation that happens today. And before I begin, a quick recap of what we do here at IterateUX. We are an open Discord community who helps UXers learn, connect, and grow their careers. So people of all levels are welcome. We host weekly virtual meetups and coffee chat sessions with guest speakers who share the expertise and experience on UX topics. We also host feedback sessions for design and portfolio work, and we're always looking forward to hosting challenges such as this today itself, design challenges and whiteboard challenges to upskill your designing skills. So before we begin, please make sure you're muted throughout the presentation. We will have an open Q&A at the end, so you can ask anything or share any comments you have at the end. You can make use of the chat meanwhile, and CJ will be keeping track of all the questions for later on today. Meanwhile, you can engage in our Discord community, start a conversation. We also have a networking channel for connecting with each other. CJ will be sharing those links in the chat. And if you'd like to get more involved with us, there's also a link where you can sign up to be a volunteer or a mentor with IterateUX to be more involved. Please do check out us at our social media channels as well, if you have any feedback or insights on what we do here at IterateUX. And if you do like what you're seeing and what we're doing here, feel free to support us by sending a donation on Ko-fi to keep our services going. So all of us here are volunteers, so every donation goes straight into the community. So any amount is greatly appreciated. So today is the first day of events. We will have team 12, team 2, and then team 14 presenting. A day after tomorrow, we will have the second day of presentation, and we'll have another 3 set of teams presenting at the time. So we will see you guys at that event as well. So with that, I'd like to now introduce team 12, our first team for the day, who will be sharing the screen to present their findings. Team 12, take it away. Stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Rupendra.
Thank you.
Hi there. We're Team 12 in this IterateUX Research Challenge. I'm Rosanna Mendelson, and the rest of the team includes Sue Alba and Samantha Lane, with Mandy as our mentor. Hi, Mandy. Thank you for allowing us a chance to present our research findings. Let's jump right in. So we were teamed up with Urvana Services, which connects adventure seekers with local guides all across Canada. The problem they're currently facing is that users are abandoning the website after reaching the search results page. The objectives we came up with for our research were to evaluate the search functionality of the website and if it meets users' needs and expectations, as well as suggest improvements to the search functionality with the ultimate goal of increasing the amount of booking. In this presentation, we will talk about our research methods, user interviews and usability tests, personas and customer journey maps, insights, conclusion, and next steps. Sue, you might be muted.
Hello, sorry about that. Hi, so first, first thing that we're going to show you is the research methods. What we used were card sorting, comparing Nirvana with similar websites through a competitive analysis, and finally, a combined user interview and moderated usability test to better understand users' needs and pain points. For the user interviews, we created a short screener survey that would allow us to find participants who regularly go on outdoor adventures and have booked them online in the past. We ended up with a total of 8 participants. For the usability tests, we gave participants 4 short tasks to complete. The purpose was to uncover insights about how users search by location, by activity, by suitability, and search by skill level. We found that users largely failed the task as they were unable to find an adventure that they themselves would actually book.
Based on the user interviews, we created 2 personas and accompanying customer journey maps. The first persona is Mila. Mila is 28 and a social explorer. Here's more about her, including her goals and frustrations. Mila is planning a trip with her friends for her birthday, but does not have anything specific in mind when she reaches Yavanna. So Mila starts off her booking experience feeling stumped on what activity to search for. She decides to start off with her location, but is then frustrated when she gets 0 results. She changes her location and is confused about some of the results and what the activity actually is. Now she's annoyed she'll have to click each adventure just to learn what it is about. She removes the location and applies filters to her search. She notices the categories drop-down menu and wonders if this was something that she'd missed on the homepage. She selects ziplining, gets 0 results, and decides to visit TripAdvisor instead.
Our next persona is Stanley. He is 38 and married with 2 kids. Here's more about him along with his goals and frustrations. He is planning a trip for his family where they already have their flight and hotel booked, but want to plan a fun, family-friendly outdoor adventure while there with a local guide. Stanley leaves the keyword search blank and just types in Vancouver as a location. He gets a few results, but some of the titles are vague. Since he is going with his family, he changes the number of explorers to 4 and selects the beginner skill level. The results do not change and he grows frustrated. In the end, he can't figure out which adventures will be good for his children, so he quits and looks elsewhere.
The first and probably most important insight we learned is that 100% of participants did not know what to search for on the initial homepage search. We had a lot of users say they would like to have seen a list of all available activities that they could choose from. For this insight, we recommend changing the search keyword text in the search text box to a question. Second, add auto suggestions when users start typing, along with an option to display maps of all available adventures. And finally, adding collection of activities as cards on the homepage so users like Stanley who are starting their search from scratch can see activities such as family-friendly adventures.
So from these suggestions, we come up with some low fidelity wireframes just to see what that would look like on the homepage. So here we've got the questions that we reworded. It's not interactive yet, but these would be, so you could click into them to have auto suggestions. These categories are new as a lot of users didn't know what to begin with. So this will give them some ideas. And for someone like Stanley that quickly wants to find family-friendly outdoor activities, we've got some suggested collections at the top. Other things include top locations, activities nearby with instant booking, and some sections that focus a lot on the guides, because I think there's quite a few users missed the point of this site, that was its unique thing, that it was all of the activities have guides with them. All right.
So the next insight relates to the search results page and how 100% of our participants' task resulted in 0 results. Users felt that they had reached a dead end. Our suggestions for this insight include having an auto suggestion in the search box to prevent users from reaching 0 results, another is to tell users how to recover from 0 results, finally to give users alternatives to their searches.
The third insight we discovered is that 87.5% of participants had difficulty finding, applying, and clearing the filters, more specifically in regards to the categories filter that showcases all of the available outdoor activities. An issue with that is the location of the categories tab is almost impossible to access on the homepage and nearly impossible to find on the results page. To help make this process easier for users, we suggest combining and adding the filters on the left-hand side of the results page. The card sorting results would help to categorize these activities in an intuitive way. Moving the chat box out of the way of the filters would also help resolve this issue. And finally, in regards to the functionality of the filters, improving the selector inputs.
Our last insight we discovered is that the activity cards did not provide enough information for users to make a decision. 62.5% of users wanted clearer or additional information on the activity cards. A recommendation is to have consistently labeled activity titles that describe what the activity is and where it is located in order to gain this insight. Additionally, adding keyword identifiers such as family-friendly or moderate. And finally, adding a map option that would allow users to visualize the location of the activities.
So for those 3 insights related to the results page, filters, and then the activity cards, we created another mid-fidelity wireframe. And as you can see, the user here typed in backpacking, but spelled it wrong. So it says, whoops, sorry, no results for that, but did you mean backpacking? And also other tips on how to get better search results. And then because this user had selected beginner and typed in Montreal, the suggestions below that show things related to that. So activities close to Montreal and other beginner activities, as well as other family-friendly activities. And also another thing to point out is the titles of the activities do include the location and what the activity is. So they do follow a same kind of format so that users can clearly understand what the adventure is and not have to click on it and figure it out themselves. Also, we moved the chat box to the right side of the page where it is fixed while they scroll. So if they need to get help, they know exactly where it is. So in conclusion, from our research, we learned that the ineffective search functionality of Urvana will cause users to leave the website. The biggest challenges for users were not knowing what to search for, getting 0 results for searches, filters that were not intuitive, and vague activity cards. By following our suggestions, we believe that users will find it easier to discover activities that suit their needs by providing them with better tools to search and filter through activities, as well as redirect them when they receive 0 results. In doing so, Urvana will likely see an increase in successful bookings, which will make expanding to other parts of the world a more seamless transition.
For the next steps, we suggest a plan that includes company-wide involvement at Urvana. Here's what we suggest for the UX team, the product team, and the IT team.
We had a great time doing the research challenge, and we thank you for allowing us to present. Here are some behind-the-scenes snapshots of us throughout this whole process. We will now pass it over to the mentor for feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so a couple of things. When you had originally shown your overall what was done in terms of your methodologies used, the order there didn't seem to match the order that you went through everything after that slide. So I was curious which was the right order in terms of what you did when.
It was the slide, but we had to cut a lot of things out to fit the 10 minutes. But in the initial presentation in the case study, it's in the order of, it shows the card sorting results before we go into like showing the wireframes.
Okay, I do like that you had that overview slide. It was very helpful before you jump into each individual thing. I didn't 100% catch all the detail on every slide because we were going through it relatively quickly, but I did like a lot of what you did here. So the journey map clearly highlighted where the pain points are and the differences in the journey map between each persona that you had, which if you're going to include a journey map other than for overall purposes, I think that's very key to highlight between persona 1 and persona 2. What was the big change in their journey? Why are you splitting up those personas into 2 different personas? I think it's best to, if you're including multiple personas, to really highlight what those differences are. So it's very clear to the person that you're presenting to why you're doing these changes and who it's related to, knowing that there's multiple personas being used here. I also really like that you had the quotes in addition to your insight slide. So it's not just here's what we figured out, here's what we found out, but actually talking directly to those people. And I know it's not always possible, but I always like to include video highlight reels as well, even if it's just a short, like 5-second snippet of their key thing that they're saying at that point to really help that get that point across without having to read the entire quote through and through. But I do like having those quotes on the slides.
We did have the videos, but they wouldn't let us put them in Figma because you need like a Figma Pro account. So, but we've got them, and we'll share them with you at the end.
Okay, awesome, perfect. Yeah, and when it comes to the search users not really knowing what to do when they landed on the search page, I was kind of curious as to what was the root cause of that? Like when you saw people get to that search page, what were you hearing?
Do you mean on the homepage or the search results page?
The search results page, sorry.
Oh, you mean when they get like 0 results or?
Yeah, so what I'm a little bit confused about is the key problem that was defined by the stakeholder here was really that people are abandoning on the search page, right? So they're abandoning on that after doing the search, they abandon at that point of getting the results. Is that right?
Yeah, I think one of the key quotes was that we keep feeling like we're hitting a dead end. A lot of results would end in 0. Even if you search any activity in Canada, it comes back with 0 results, and there wasn't really any way out of that. So I think the wireframes that we showed had different routes out of that. Like, okay, if there's no activities here, why not try a closer location? So it's not just starting the search from the beginning again each time.
Offering suggestions, and then also including the map feature so that people could browse just by looking at a map. A lot of our interview participants had asked for that. Like, oh, it would have been nice to be able to like just kind of zoom in or zoom out of a city and kind of see what's around there. Maybe I can like change my plans or something like that.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Just was a little bit unsure because at one point in the presentation, you had mentioned even before hitting that search results page that they didn't really know what to search for to begin with. And so I was curious if you were more focused around them ending up in a dead end and that was causing a lot of the problems, or if more of the problem was that they didn't know even how to start that search. That was a little bit unclear to me. And those are two kind of different problems. I'm not sure if you went after both or if one was kind of more of your focus for this.
Yeah, I would say both. Like the first insight was more about the homepage and not knowing what to search, whereas the following 3 insights were more about once you'd hit that search results page.
Okay, and from what I caught, at least, please correct me if I'm wrong, those journey maps that you had associated with the personas all started with the search, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you said search in that, did you mean homepage going into search? Or did you mean actual from search results? Okay, it wasn't super clear. So I was a little bit confused where you were starting from, if that was from the home utilizing the search and then going into the search process, or if it was just starting from search to begin with. So calling that out, making it a little bit more clear would have been a little bit more helpful there. I do like the lo-fi fidelities, and then obviously at a good point you decided to upgrade it a little bit as well and add a little bit more color and everything into that, make it a little bit more hi-fi. And I thought the point that you did that is correct and a good point to start doing that. Also, I liked how you linked the card sorting results to insights that you gathered from other methodologies. If you're going to be running methodologies, I think it's always key to be able to link them up to whatever else you found, either in the past or in future research that you'll do as well. And so it's always great to pull in past research and say, hey, we found this insight, but here's how we're going to organize it. And this is why we did this other research methodology to help figure that out. So I do think that that was a really good call out. And for insight number 4, when you're talking about what kind of information people need on the search results for it to be useful to them, did you kind of dig into that as well?
We did, and that was more, so that's why in our next steps page, we talk about how a lot of these changes would require company-wide involvement, like the IT team. And I know that when we had talked to Leticia and Paulina, our stakeholders, they were like, inventory is a problem. They don't have a lot of inventory. That's why a lot of searches. But a lot of it is also just like the back end, like tagging of activities. And then also when people sign up to be guides and they are kind of in charge of, writing what the titles are, just having something like maybe with the product team kind of guide those people to make it so that their titles isn't just something like what we saw, something just that was called Crooked Falls, and we had no idea what that was for. So just being able to have them follow a format so that the users who are trying to search for things have a better time of seeing what it is.
Okay, so there was a little bit of scope issue there as well, or tech functionality. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I know we're out of time, but good job, everybody. Great, awesome job putting everything together, especially in 10 minutes. I know that's really hard.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Team 12, for that amazing presentation. And from the last screen, we see that you did a lot of work, but also had a lot of fun behind the scenes. So that's an amazing presentation. And thanks, Jen, for the feedback. Now I'd like to pass on to Team 2 for the presentation. So feel free to share your screen, and then the stage is yours.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Team 2's presentation for the IterateUX Research Challenge. Our client is Future FinTech Group, Inc., and our research was focused on their product Tempo. We are Team 2, Chelsea, Lauren, Kayla, and Parithra. This was a 6-week project, and we started with a meeting with the client, followed by 3 weeks of creating a research plan and executing it, and ending with sharing our findings with the stakeholders. Today, each of our team members will be discussing our project, starting with the introduction, research approaches, methods, and insights gained throughout the IterateUX Research Challenge. Tempo is an international money transfer app that allows users to send money to 17 international countries. They offer competitive exchange rates, fast transfers with a low flat fee, and a multi-currency digital wallet while providing 24/7 customer support. We started out with a brief problem statement that would help guide us in our research, understanding why users are not making transactions via the Tempo app after downloading it. Initially, we thought that lack of technological knowledge and accessibility to customer service might be reasons for non-adoption. Tempo's demographic have expectations from using remittance apps, and those are not currently being met in terms of functionality. And we were surprised to find that users were having various issues during the onboarding process, further contributing to their usability problems.
In order to understand doubts of Tempo app downloaders, we had to take a step back. Since we did not have access to their current users, we instead chose to focus our research on understanding the needs and preferences of the target users. We gathered knowledge about the industry as well as their competitors, interviewed target users, and evaluated Tempo usability to identify problems related to the app usability and adoption. Our research efforts began with discovery methods that were aimed at gaining insight into issues and research requests from the stakeholders through an interview. We undertook secondary research to understand the fintech industry and product adoption by users. We furthered competitive analysis previously completed by the client by focusing on onboarding experiences of the main competitors. This helped us further refine our focus as we shifted to customer research. We recruited participants via a pre-screener survey that we posted on various online social media and forums. Questions were related to users' choice of money transfer services. We received 24 survey responses and 4 agreed to be interviewed and take part in a moderated usability test. Our main criteria for selection was that the participants were immigrants and they made regular international money transfers.
So after our usability testing concluded, we came together as a group to collaboratively do the affinity mapping. 2 main themes emerged related to trust and usability, and this gave us a clear picture of target users' preferences, needs, and pain points. So who is the Tempo user? She's an immigrant now living and working in the US. She's very close to her family and sends money home often. She uses a few remittance apps and often checks the market for the best rates. Even though she shops around for the best price, one thing she won't compromise on is her sense of security. As new apps continue to show up on the market, she's hesitant to provide her personal information. Knowing this, she stands by well-known brands because she knows she can rely on them. And so that leads us into the main insight category of trust. Our secondary research highlighted that for financial services, trust is a must and data privacy is the new differentiator. Though trust is not gained overnight and is also influenced by many factors, we've been able to identify a few ways how users attribute providing personal information to gaining trust. Tempo is asking its users to trust them with their financial needs and private data, and this can be especially daunting for users who are unfamiliar with the brand name. And this is because building a loyal user base is attached not only to positive first impressions, but also by trusting a company that users know will deliver on their needs. Across all our participants, it was clear that providing SSN to Tempo was a no-go. They felt it was personal and a guarded secret. Analysis of the onboarding experiences of the competitors also highlighted that SSN was not a commonly asked piece of information. There's an expectation of transparency about how services work, benefits of using services, and a need for clarifying additional information. And so thus, brand popularity and reliability contributes to trusting the app.
While we were conducting usability testing with users, we decided to test out the app ourselves and noticed a major flaw. The flow was inconsistent between users. Some more specific examples of these flaws were flaws in the navigation system. It was hard to move between screens during the onboarding process, unable to verify personal information, unable to exit out of the flow throughout different parts of the flow, unsure as to why some of the sensitive information was needed, such as the SSN, an unclear error message after inputting an SSN, and difficulty inputting information.
Our next main finding are that there are multiple instances of visual accessibility errors in the app. Tempo app was evaluated using Nielsen Norman's usability heuristics and WebAIM's color contrast calculator. We found that Tempo violated 3 of these heuristics. For example, you can see the screen on the left that the progress bar up at the top fails to accurately depict the user's status of where they are in the flow. Even a participant pointed out, there are more steps involved at onboarding than the 3 that are depicted in the progress bar. It is also unclear that a person is to click the SSN in this screen. On the right is the pre-receipt screen, which includes a pink font against a white background, and also represented below is white text against a gray button, which fails at both normal and large text in WebAIM's color contrast calculator. Color contrast is vital to accessibility as people with low vision or color blindness may not be able to read what is depicted on the screens.
In conclusion, let's recap. We sought to understand why users are not making any transactions via the Tempo app after downloading it. Due to research constraints, we focused on target users of Tempo. Our research goals were to understand U.S. immigrants' experiences with international money transfer apps. Our research objectives aim to understand and discover users' preferences, motivations, and needs while discovering any usability-related issues. All our research highlights 2 main insights related to building trust and ease of usability as being key to Tempo app adoption. Target users have clearly shown reluctance to share their SSN. They prefer an easy and simple money transfer experience and have an expectation of transparency and want to know why some personal information is requested. At the same time, being cautious about data privacy measures while sharing personal information with a new app. First impressions are important, and we have uncovered issues relating to the initial onboarding and expectations of an easy and seamless money transfer experience. Given the research conducted, we feel we have collected sufficient data and have identified some next steps that we recommended our client, Future FinTech Group, take in order to gain trust from Tempo app users. To reconsider their SSN requirement, apply onboarding processes that have become user expectations, consider some new design changes to reflect the research findings on accessibility and heuristics issues, and consider moderated usability testing on app. After completing this challenge, we took some time to reflect on the project as a whole. We analyzed our research insights in order to understand why users weren't making any transactions with the Tempo app. However, we could have preferred to conduct usability testing on the live app instead of with the prototype version. Ideally, we should have had more communication with the stakeholders, and we could have gathered additional research on their target users, being immigrants coming to the US. Some of our takeaways after completing this project would be our collaboration in product management, conducting evaluation research, and getting to work with a real client and a real potential product. Thank you, IterateUX, for this research opportunity. And here are some of the tools that we use to keep our workload organized, as well as our resources.
Thanks, Team 2. I will time box myself this time. Yeah, so I like that you had that timeline that clearly showed here's what we did when we did it, here's how long it took approximately, and also here's what we did. So that is something that I often include also in my research readouts when I'm speaking directly to stakeholders, or even when I'm just doing like a case study in an interview. They always want to know what timelines were like, so they kind of know and get an idea of what constraints you're working with, which is very relevant in this case because you had a lot of constraints on time. So I do like this slide. I think it's very helpful. On the insight slide, that's where I started to get a little bit confused. So as you were going through things, granted, we have a very small amount of time. Normally, you would have much more time to present your research findings. It was a little bit hard for me to follow along what you were doing when, who it involved, what kind of methodology, what were the insights specifically from that piece that you did. So for example, when you're doing like the actual interview part versus the secondary research versus the affinity mapping, it wasn't very clear to me what was the impact of having done that methodology. So because you're looking at combining a lot of different pieces into one presentation, I think it would be good to kind of show, first we did this, here's the impact of that, here's what we learned. Because of what we learned, we went on to do this next piece. And from that, we also additionally learned these other things, which either confirms what you did in the past one, links to it some way, explains it, whatever that may be. So you can start to build up that story of all of your findings as you went through all of the process. So that would be kind of my main call out here, is just building up that story in a way that's easy to follow along and understand what you did, when you did it, who you did it with, and what was learned from it. I do like that you had a slide on affinity mapping. While it often is overlooked as a call out, I think that's very important to call out when you're doing things like interviews and presenting your research, not to stakeholders necessarily, because they're probably going to be part of it, but presenting it to any kind of interviewer. It's good to note what you followed up with, who you followed it up with, and why. So in this case, it would be, we did affinity mapping as a research group. Everybody had a part in it. We all came together to piece out all of the research and iterate on what those insights were, going to the core insight. So I do like having this slide there. The customer research would be great to highlight key findings from the survey. So here you particularly use age range of participants. If that was particularly important, great. If there was some other insight that you gathered from doing that recruitment, whether it's like their percentage of use of it or some of their fears you may have gathered, that's always really good to call out, even though this is technically a slide just focused on, hey, we recruited some people. It's always good to highlight what was learned from that slide, because there's always opportunities to learn within your recruitment as well, and that can often help. I think there could be a little bit of transition slides, and this goes back to that storytelling and building up. This is a little bit of why I got lost. For example, you went from affinity mapping and you instantly started going into personas, and it wasn't necessarily very clear how that process linked together or that you were transitioning to begin with. It was just a very sudden transition. So I think a little bit more transitions would be helpful as well. I do like the quote call out on the persona cards. I think rather than including a lot of background information, a lot of demographic information, a lot of that is generally not important unless it speaks to a very particular segment that you're going after. But in this case, what you're really more focused around is their goals, their wants and needs, their pains, all of that sort of information. And you'll see in UX research, we're doing away a lot more with focusing on demographics of a persona, focusing a lot more on behaviors and psychographics. Onboarding process walkthrough. So on the onboarding process walkthrough, I think it would be best to call out on the screens directly where these problems exist. You did this a little bit later where you did have some circles, you did have some call outs, but when you're talking about like flaws in the navigation system, I don't know exactly what you're talking about. I know that there's a problem. I don't know what that problem is. I don't know where it exists. I don't know how you found it. I don't know anything around that. And when you're doing heuristics, typically you're kind of taking on a persona as you walk through the heuristic process. And so it would be good just to, again, call that out. Here's the persona base, and here's the problems that we found, linking back to issues with that persona. So if that persona has a high need for trust and confidence in a brand, linking that back into some of your recommendations in the heuristics, I think would be really strong and really powerful. I was curious why you used accessibility in your heuristics specifically.
Due to the color contrast failing, the color contrast calculator in WebAIM, people with low vision or color blindness would likely have difficulty reading the text on some of these screens.
Okay, was that based off of a finding or something that led you to think that accessibility could be an issue to begin with? And that's why they aren't doing the transactions?
Well, the font could be hard to read with someone with low vision or color blindness, which could result in users having trouble using the product.
Okay, yeah, I was curious because when we do projects with stakeholders, typically, unless it's a specific call out to we want to focus on accessibility, or we want to make sure that every person can be using this, or accessibility is just part of our demographic to begin with. Anytime you bring in accessibility, it becomes a much larger conversation and a much bigger project. And so I was curious why you had brought it out here and if it related to something specific that you had found in your recruitment survey or in your interviews that sparked that thought to include accessibility here, because generally we don't look to include it unless it makes a lot of sense or unless the project is specifically focused around accessibility. So yeah. Just curious on there.
So I think some of the moderated usability at that time, people did mention about, not understanding what that was and not about the, this font size being too small, and especially the receipt, because it's money transactions and we want to be able to see it in a better way. But I won't say that it was a huge call out, but it was just a slight call out. And since we were anyway doing the usability part, I think some of our directions were also based on the fact that we were using the prototype versus people actually using the app. And there was a very clear difference between actually using the app versus using the prototype, because certain errors which were coming on the apps were very different than then people didn't face that on the prototype. So I think we were getting more their experience of what it would be like when they're doing the onboarding and not really actually doing the onboarding. So we just took out the points, like even in a prototype where things were being pre-filled, they had so much hesitation for so many things. They were not actually inputting their own thing. If they had the app in front of them and they were doing usability on that, it would have been even more.
Yeah, and that's always something really powerful to call out. Again, that comment that I made in the last team about including videos. When you have videos of someone hesitating so much to do that, that speaks volumes, especially when it's an actual behavior that's being captured and not just a quote, although quotes are also powerful. I think that that's something that is really helpful in this case as well. But as just a final comment, other than that storytelling and building it up and having those transitions, I think the only other thing that stood out to me as something that could be improved on is making sure that all of the things that you're talking about are clear and actionable. So anytime you're making a recommendation, making sure that you are speaking exactly to a specific point, highlighting it in a design, whatever that may be, and then calling out what could be changed, how it would be changed, and how that might impact the users to eventually get to whatever goal, in this case, improving retention or having that that first transaction being done with these new users. So just making sure that everything is a lot more or not a lot more, but making sure that things are just really actionable. So expectations of transparency. What does transparency mean in this case? What level of transparency do they need? What sort of information or what sort of changes could provide transparency? Things like that. But really good job, everybody.
Thank you. We have the details in the stakeholder presentation, which is a half an hour one and not.
I know it's so hard. 10 minutes is terrible. That's so hard. I wouldn't want to do it.
Thank you.
I know
Thank you
it
for
can
all
be.
the feedback, Jen.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, team two. I know it can be really hard with the time constraints to fit everything you've done, all the hard work you've done. Regardless, you had a stellar presentation. Thank you for that. And thank you, Jen, for again, things you can work on to take this presentation to the next level. Up next, we will have team 14. So you can feel free to share your screen and then start your presentation.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we can. Okay. Hello guys, my name is Tanya. I'm going to give a research report on Stop to Heal. The table of contents, so we're going to have an introduction, research approach, insights, conclusion, recommendation, and next steps. So for the introduction, we are going to give you a background of Stop to Heal. So Stop to Heal is an organization that takes women through a healing journey who have suffered through traumatic experience of sex trafficking in their life. Stop to Heal wanted to research on how they can attract donors and maximize their participants with the organization. So research overview. Objective of this Stop to Heal were that finding marketing ideas to increase donations, finding what website content and information would influence donors, and how to make seamless donation process. The methodologies which we used were competitor research, one-to-one interview with another organization, and one-to-one moderated user interview. Now I'm going to explain about the research approach and what we did. So what we know, and then at what scale, and deep dive. We will go deep dive with the interviews and the survey. So for the survey result, we got 25 response from the donors. The main takeaway for the survey was that donors would like to see a huge impact from an organization before trusting them with their money. I'm going to read out few quotes as well. I struggle to give large and national organization I'm not familiar with because I don't always trust with how my money is being used. Then we also asked a few other questions. So how does the following impact your willingness to donate? The most amount of people said the trust in the organization, and what platform do they use? So the donors usually use donors website and GoFundMe. So we interviewed with one of the other organization as well, which were similar to organization we were working on. So they mentioned that they also mentioned few mistakes they had in the starting. So they said they were overly ambitious, and they said like the new organization should focus on small projects and keep end goal in mind. And they also mentioned that the social media outreach should be used to attract more donors, and as well as networking at events should also be done to gain more partnerships. Based on our survey, we conducted 4 interviews for users and who had experience in donating to nonprofit organizations. We also did a competitor audit with one of the similar organization. So their name was Rape Crisis Center. And the features which we liked about this organization were the first donation option required login, and I help need, so like call to action buttons, and using Amazon Smile for donation. And from our user interviews, we got 2 personas. The first one was Sarah. So she usually donate to a lot of organization, and she helps to smaller organization that has funding under $1 million. But she has some frustration with not finding specific information and having long and complex payment methods. And the other one is Loana. So she is very new to helping organizations, and she would love to do it, but she has some trust issues because she's very new. So she wants to know about the organization before helping them with her money. So we also made a user journey map for Sarah. Now, my other team member, Geneva, would like to go on to these insights.
Hi, I'm Geneva, and I'm going to lead you through our insights for marketing ideas, website content, and payment process. So first of all, our main insights were things that we were wrong about. People do not prefer to receive regular updates or email newsletters. They do not search for nonprofits on their own to donate. And our interviewees didn't seem too interested in tax breaks, but we could also do more research on that. What we were right about, people don't trust organizations unless they have like a personal connection. Seeing the past achievement was a main motivation for donors, and social media is a good outreach. Things that we were surprised about, people want to donate to smaller organizations. Not many people were aware about organizations that help sex trafficking victims, and partnerships is a great way to build credibility with donors. So I want to lead you through our marketing insights. Donors want to see the direct impact of their donations and feel connected to the organization. They usually find smaller nonprofits through established organizations' website, social media, and word of mouth. Donors want to feel connected. Bigger organizations don't usually develop that connection, and people don't see where that money is going. And donors like to get connected through like volunteerships or activities with the organization, or through a direct personal one-on-one contact. Next slide. So we did find that having bigger organizations was a good credibility source. This participant found a smaller organization through a bigger organization. So our marketing suggestions were to start with a campaign using a crowdfunding platform, because our stakeholder is in the planning and development stage. So we found that GoFundMe can be a good platform to launch projects, and show this project is to go to buying a property for my clients, and post project progress and update on the social media. Using Instagram and Facebook is a good outreach tool because people can find information on their own terms. And keep your donors engaged. Engage your donors with fun activities and drives that enrich the organization, and that will make them more likely to promote your organization via word of mouth. Next, I want to lead you through our insights for website content. Most donors prefer a high level of transparency and want to feel as if they're making a direct impact on their community. So donors prefer to donate to nonprofits that are transparent about where their funds are coming from and how they're being used. A lot of people didn't want to donate to bigger corporations because they thought the money was just going to the CEO. And people were donating to organizations that they had a personal experience with or volunteerships in the past. And so in this quote, I think this person was talking about how they are donating specifically to a nonprofit that they had used for their services previously. So our website suggestions: develop trust through showcasing your credentials and achievements. Our stakeholder is actually a therapist with mental health and addiction recovery. So I think highlighting that will ensue trust with donors. Highlight your goals and achievements with numeric data. Donors like to see the impact and achievement with data, and these results can show transparency and make the donors feel like they made an impact. And market locally. Develop SEO content for your local community to raise awareness raise awareness and get donations in your area. A lot of the people we interviewed also talked about how they like to see campaigns that are like for local nonprofits. Even if they were out of state, they were donating to something that was like locally in another state that they have lived in before. So, I want to lead you through our insights for the donation process. Most users want to have freedom on donation process and afterward customizable options for donation amount, duration, and a newsletter opt-out features. So donors expressed some frustration with some donation websites that were taking a long had a long process. So we suggested 1 or 2 pages, and donors thought that the credit card payment option is important to is important to have on the website, but also having something that's like quick and easy where you don't need to get your credit card, like a PayPal that everyone uses. And too much contact can discourage donors to keep donating. Some people would click the opt-out feature but continue to receive info, so they want to be able to opt out of further information. And this person said that they like to donate through Amazon Smile because they're already on Amazon. So creating something using PayPal or Amazon Smile are really good options to use. So donation suggestions. Use a maximum of 2 pages donation payment process with customizable options. We want to make sure that donors can customize how much they're giving and make it reoccurring or one time, and opt out of the newsletter. Implement payment methods that are already familiar to users. Using something like the credit card feature or PayPal are ways that people will feel more comfortable with and they're already used to it. And email marketing for donators should be conducted exclusively and should only be used for people who wish to be updated and not all the donors. Now I'm going to give you the Jihei.
Okay, hi. Yeah, let me introduce our conclusion based on our research. So here's our summary of research. So based on our insights, we categorized again based on marketing and website donation. So for the Start to Heal, should go to market locally. And to start with the campaign, use crowdfunding platforms such as GoFundMe would be highly recommend. And also post progress and updates on social media rather than email marketing to keep engaging with the donors. And on the website, highlighting organization's goal and achievement with the data. And also developing trust, showcasing the CEO, Kim's credential and the achievement to be effective. And in a donation process page, maximum 2 pages of a donation process with the customizable options are important. And also implement a payment method that are already familiar to users. And here's our recommendation and next step. First of all, the Start to Heal has a big team story, which is a quite sad and tragic story of Mindy. Mindy's story is starting from from her childhood and how she suffered from those sex trafficking situation, and then how was her experience. But after our research, we recognized that the users, the donors, they wanted to hear about something more success story than the sad story. So we recommend that turn victim's story into the victory story, such as Mindy is in the literacy program of Start to Heal, and she's ready for obtaining new employment. So in this way, the donors, the users can understand what we are working for those victims and those people, and then what's our organization's goal and our mission. And also most important part, customizable payment options are really important in the website. So here's our example. The number of donations are selectable, and also users can choose the amount of donation by clicking the button or manually set the number of donation. And also they can choose various payment options such as a credit card and bank account and then PayPal. And as a new organization still in a development phase, networking with the established organizations in local would be really important, because in this way, the software can create a new connect with the potential donors and create a long-term goals together. And lastly, develop local-based SEO keywords are recommended, because most of our users who we interviewed, they point out that they want to support their local organizations rather than the other far organizations located in the different state. So develop SEO contents based on your local community will raise the awareness and then donation in your area. And here's our next step. For Stop to Heal, reach out to the larger organizations and build a digital presence through the regular social media updates. And for us as a UX designer, we should find more users who made a larger donation to non-profit organizations, and also design landing pages based on our stakeholder meeting. And yeah, we can develop our wireframe based on our stakeholders' feedback. And after that, we can conduct user testing once the website is ready. Here's our resource list. And lastly, this is Stop to Heal's main message, like rehabilitation is a lifestyle, not an event. So we hope our Stop to Heal can spread out this amazing message in the future. Thank you so much.
Great job, Team 14. That was a cute ending. I think you guys had really good objectives split from what is a much broader problem background, especially when you look to do something that's very heavily involved in what is traditionally market research and not necessarily UX research. I think you did a very good job of being able to contain that and making sure that it does speak to the users and isn't just pure market research. So I think the 3 callouts that you had for the objectives were great. You also had a good main takeaway from the survey and the inclusion of the quotes. You could even probably reduce some of those quotes just in favor of following up with some of those other takeaways that you may have learned that may not be as big or as seemingly important, but could play a factor in what you suggest or what you conclude in the end. So linking those 2 back together again, I think would be great. What does this comment even mean? Survey results. So with the survey results, I think they're always more impactful in combination with insight and what it means for the company, or additionally in terms of future research as well. So when you're going through survey results, I think linking all of that back into what does this mean for us? What does it mean for the company? What does it mean for the users? What kind of impact does it have? I think would be a good way to link those all up as well. And with the interview with the other organization CEOs, I thought that was a really creative recruitment method that isn't often thought about, but I think it does call into a lot of good research that you would not have necessarily otherwise found if you had purely focused on what you would immediately see as the user. So those people who are actually making donations. I think it is good as another comparison point, and it's a great point to include here. I would love to hear more about the insights from the interviews that were done. You had a slide that very quickly went over it. Questions being asked is always good to include when you're doing something like a case study. But even just flashing up, here's some of the main things that we learned from these interviews would be great. I know you kind of follow up with it section by section following, but even just some summary slide that lets me know, okay, the user interview section is kind of like finished. We're moving on here and going into like some of our insights, some of our conclusions.
Yeah, actually, our insights were related to the user interviews, which we got. Like, the results were from users. So like the quotes which we have put in the insights were part of the things they have said.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it wasn't super clear to me that those were those were both linked together instead of it being separate, because I know a lot of different teams were running many different methodologies and many different things throughout their process. And so it's the hard part about making this 10-minute presentation is being able to clearly articulate, here's what was done and here's what was learned, and then summarize it all in the end. So it was just a little bit of confusion there, but I don't think that's a huge thing. With the personas, let me see. Yeah, so you did have a good call out to the competitive analysis designs and findings. I do like having that there as well as another point, since you had some of those actual designs included in terms of here's what we found on other websites. It would be good to have where that website was, and then you had that call out to what they did well and how that could be included on their website as well. The personas, I think, could use a quote or some simple way of showing their key differences between what the primary persona was and what the secondary was. To be fair, we're going through this at light speed, and so you normally would have talked through a little bit more regarding that. But since it is light speed, just having here's what the main persona is and here's the second persona to very clearly show those differences would be a great way to highlight very quickly why you have these two different personas. With the insights, there was a good call out to some things needing more research or needing more verification, even going a little bit further and saying this would need to be verified through like a more quantitative method. We were only speaking to 4 people here. Keep that in mind. Always caveat what you find in your research with any kind of risk allocated to it. So in this case, some of these findings, while they have depth, aren't going to have the numbers to say the vast majority of donators prefer to give to smaller organizations. There's no way to completely say that that is a high confidence. And so it's always good to call out when you're using some of these research insights where it might need more research, deeper research, other types of research even, just so that everyone knows that it's not something that has a lot of confidence. So it's something that we can talk about or go after, but just know that that's a risk that they're taking on as they make some decisions around that.
Yes. Yeah, I did want to expand on that because we did have interesting insights on that because like the people we spoke with all said tax breaks aren't what like made that for what made that don't, but we were like, are they, could it be because they're making smaller donations and so we don't have any input on bigger donations? And also the Jihei brought up like, oh, are they telling the truth? And like, do their behaviors match what they're saying? And so it was something I was wanting to expand on because it was interesting. It had interesting. Yeah.
And to your point, what they say and what they do is not always going to match up. So that's good to call out for case studies for stakeholders as well, just to keep that front of mind for everyone and to let them know that you are aware of that as you're going through these insights. So it was a good call out. The marketing suggestion sides, some of them I think were a little bit harder to be actionable on. They were a little bit less specific. I think there might have been another slide other than this. I had one specific call out around like what constitutes like a fun activity, for example. That can mean a lot of different things. So any kind of key specific things that you found in your insights that people may have brought up, suggested, been a part of, that's always good to call out as an example so they get an idea of what that could mean, because otherwise just describing it in that way is not always the most specific and therefore not always the most actionable for other teams as well. With the donation process, I would have liked to see you be a little bit more precise in the recommendations for design changes. What can they do to create a more simple, easy checkout flow, for example? Even going as far as creating some quick mock-ups or something like that would be great. I know you had this specific mock-up done, and it does call out some of the specific things. If you could link that all the way back to that particular insight, that particular conclusion and suggestion, I think it would help bring everything together. And one of the things that I noticed as you were hitting that later point of the presentation is that a lot of things were kind of almost seemed like redundant in a way. They were still bringing a different nuance, a different context to what you were originally saying to try to build up on it, but it felt almost like you're being a little bit repetitive in some places. And so I think it would be better to frame things up into one general, here's the insights, here's the actionable things from those insights, here's our recommendations going forward, which would then include screens like this, just to make sure that you're not losing people as you're going through this and as they're like, okay, well, we know that, we've heard that already, we went through this. I do think you had a good conclusion slide to show the high-level recommendations per objective area that was a good, just like final, here's the top level things at a very high level. Let's talk more about it, kind of an opening into that next step. And just making sure that you're tying everything back in. So as you're making the end recommendations, make sure that as you're calling out each recommendation, linking it back to what caused that recommendation. What was the insight that led to it? What were some of the conclusions that you had that led to it? You can kind of summate all of that, I think, into one clear slide per main recommendation. The recommendations for research user testing. So at the very end, you had some recommendations and next steps. A lot of them, I think, were very valid, very good. It's nice that you kind of separated out, here's what the company should do. And for anyone who might be carrying on with research, here's some of the things that they should focus on as well. And you called out some specific ones like the larger donation, which I know understand a little bit more about when you were talking to me a little bit earlier. So that's always good to call out. But I think a lot more discovery research can be done, and it's always good to call that out because there's always this rush to go into an evaluative methodology, and that's not always going to get you the best insight for what you're looking for. So there's a lot of other things you uncovered that lead to a lot more questions, right? So you looked at content, what type of content people like. Well, did you look at how they're organized? What sort of organization or information architecture they would like to see that in? There's a lot of other discovery things that can be included. And so I think that's always good to include as an option and to create a discussion, knowing that there's always more discovery research to be done. It's just a question of how it fits into an overall roadmap and timelines aligning with their roadmap as well for product. But I think that's something that could be good to include. Otherwise, I think that's all the comments that I have written down, but good job, everybody.
Hey everyone, on behalf of IterateUX, we would like to thank you so much for watching this week's event. If you like the content, please leave a like and subscribe. We'll have events every Thursday at 5:30 Pacific Time. Join our Discord in the description to find out more.